Welcome to the 23rd episode of the 1796 podcast, a monthly podcast that features exclusive interviews and in-depth news about the Tennessee National Guard and the Tennessee Military Department. I'm Captain Hall.
And I'm Master Sergeant Ham,
your co-host of the 1796 podcast. Happy New Year and welcome to 2024. We're excited to take a moment in January of this year to do a year in review from 2023.
We'll be looking back at 2023 and discussing some of our favorite episodes.
Sergeant Ham, Happy New Year. Welcome to 2024. Excited to be here at January Drill.
Happy New Year to you as well, and I'm excited for this episode. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Well, we are excited to explore the 2023 highlights from our podcast. We had a lot of great interviews, a lot of great discussions. Sergeant Ham, I'll kick it to you. What were your favorite highlights from the 2023 season of the 1796 podcast?
I have several favorites, but I have to say, as far as episodes go, as a whole, my favorite episode was the one where we commemorated the 30th anniversary of the Battle of Mogadishu. Master Sergeant Jay Survey, who was there, boots on the ground, as a medic, and what he experienced during that Battle of Mogadishu. And a lot of people remember the movie Black Hawk Down, and he used that movie to kind of add reference points for his story. And it was just amazing to hear his story and how that affected him. So emotional, so impactful, and just an amazing story to listen to.
That really was an exceptional episode, and we'll take a moment now to listen to a clip of that interview.
And then it started happening. Then, because we didn't know that the Black Hawk had gone down yet.
Sure.
Right? We just knew that we were taking on patients. Well, about the third or fourth patient, one of the buddies that I made that I was telling you about that said, Jay, what's happening? We're in a battle.
Right.
One of the birds went down, and we're going in to get him.
Right.
So,
right.
You know, pray for us, because they knew I was praying.
Yeah.
They knew I was a man of faith.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And they were buddies. So, I was like, okay, let's do it, man. And anyway, we started. So that they started coming in with these guys, and they were messed up. So you got to remember, this is my first, besides practicing on a dummy in school.
Right.
Right. A mannequin. My first real experience with trauma.
Absolutely.
But and then the pace kept coming. It got faster, and more were showing up, and now the guys are in tears, right?
Yeah.
So they're just, and they have to keep running off, into the dark.
Because it's still going on.
That's still going on. You got to keep going.
You got to keep going.
You got to keep going. I don't remember how many patients in I was. They carried one guy in. He's unconscious, but he's breathing. And then one of the guys trailing the cot handed me his hand, right?
Right.
And and I'm like, he goes, that's his. I was like, okay. And I can remember it like it was, yesterday.
Yeah.
Because the watch was still on the wrist, so it got him about mid forearm, and the watch was still working, and there was a wedding ring on his, a makeshift wedding ring, And I saw
Sure.
something, and I was like, hold on a minute. And I reached back to my buddy and said, what is this? Help me out. And he was like, don't stop.
Yeah.
Don't touch him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what? He said, that's an RPG round that had not triggered itself. That's how slow they were flying. Well, it lodged in his chest.
Wow.
Well, we ended up having to take him out
Away from.
and bury him alive
Oh, my goodness.
in sandbags
Yeah.
until EOD got there.
Sure.
Now, he was unconscious.
Yeah.
He didn't know what was going on, but he was still breathing.
Yeah.
I'm just out of college.
Sure.
Okay, so it's crazy. And I'm not even processing any of that yet. And we're still going. I think it went 72 hours, about 3 days of the battle. And there were lulls. There were like little breaks. You're never on break, really, but, like breaks in the massive amount of people you're receiving.
Did you just nap over to
Well,
the
we
side
got
or
ready.
keep
No, I
going,
didn't
or-
sleep for 3 days.
Okay. Okay.
We stayed up on coffee and adrenaline and just kept pumping. The intensity piece of that was 72 hours.
Yeah.
71 patients, and 19 of those being special forces that were killed in action.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was, once you got to slow down and settle down a little bit, it set in on most of us. So the weeping and the isolation piece and not knowing how to think or what to think. So if anything comes out of that, the mental health of our soldiers is very important.
Very important. Absolutely.
And it's real.
It
Yeah.
is.
I
It
know we
is.
talk about it, but you don't see it. So you're just kind of like, you blow it off sometimes in people. But man, if they've been through things, they're dealing, I promise. Because I'm still carrying it today. I mean, I just started crying a little bit, you know what I mean, about the injuries. So
Totally
you end up
understand that.
carrying that for the rest of your life. That's why freedom is such a precious commodity that we have because of the price, and when you're young and dumb and ignorant, like I said earlier, freedom is this thing. It's just a thing that we talk about. It's it's colors and a thing that we talk about in America, right? But man, it's a privilege and it's earned, and we should always think of those that have served.
Absolutely.
Yep.
The thing that jumped out at me right away was, war's not pretty. War's ugly. And some of the stories that were it makes the hair stand up on your arm. The gentleman who took the RPG round to the chest kind of made my blood run cold when he told that story. And this whole interview was just a roller coaster of emotions. I cried and I laughed along with them. When he mentioned freedom being such a valuable commodity, and you could hear him choke up, to me, it spoke volumes. One of the things that jumped out to me was how, as a human being, what we're physically able to handle, what we're emotionally able to handle, mentally able to handle, and push forward in the moment is amazing. But Master Sergeant Cervais brought up a very, very good point in that you carry that stuff with you. It doesn't go away. And your mental health is something that is affected by that. And he was a big advocate for getting help if you carry those mental and emotional scars, and how to move forward beyond that. And that was I think as important a message during that interview as any of the others.
Truly one of my favorite episodes as well. Having listened to all of them and being a part of all the episodes, there is something really special about hearing his story and hearing the impact of Tennessee Guardsmen in that moment in time.
So, okay, Captain Hall, now over to you. What is it that jumped out to you last year in 2023?
Well, in the spirit of sacrifice and understanding the importance of freedom, the episode that really stood out to me in terms of making me think about patriotism and freedom and what it actually means that the military does day in and day out around the world was our June 2023 episode, where we explored the history of Tennesseans' role in the D-Day invasion and in World War II in general.
Yes.
And, the Tennessee mantra of being the volunteer state is something that every Tennessean knows, but when you really dig deeply into the impact that Tennesseans had on World War II and in every conflict in the history of our country, it really is remarkable how our state has contributed to the freedom of our nation and to the freedom of others in a way that very few other states can say. So now we'll go to a clip from that episode. The 30th Infantry Division, composed of National Guard units from the Carolinas and Tennessee, landed in Normandy shortly after D-Day. The division, originally formed in 1917, was reactivated in 1940 after Nazi Germany invaded neighboring Poland. The nickname of the 30th Division was Old Hickory, named after President Andrew Jackson, a Tennessee native. In June of 1944, units of the 30th stormed the Normandy beaches following the D-Day invasion. Later that year, the unit fought in the Battle of the Bulge and helped to repulse the German attack. In March of 1945, the 30th Division crossed the Rhine River and quickly advanced to Magdeburg by April 17th. A component of the 30th Division, the 117th Infantry Regiment, was comprised primarily of Tennessee Guardsmen. Near Mortain, France, the 117th Infantry defended against Adolf Hitler's 1st SS Panzer Division, preventing the Germans from driving to the sea, and splitting the 1st and 3rd Allied armies. Their fighting ability was almost legendary, with 3 top German generals stating later that this was one of 2 critical engagements that led to the defeat of Germany in the West. The German High Command even regarded the 30th as, quote, Roosevelt's shock troops.
Pretty amazing stuff when you think of what Tennessee as a state has brought to the table over the years, especially in large conflicts like World War II.
That's exactly right, Sergeant Ham. Now, I'll kick it back to you. What was another episode that stood out to you in 2023?
Well, I have to say one of my all-time favorites, and that's just me being a little biased, is our final interview with Lieutenant Colonel Malone. What an amazing personality. Such a fantastic guy to work for and work with. I have to say, one of my favorite bosses that I've ever had. And he said some things when we were interviewing him that really jumped out at me that I really want to take to heart for me personally. But of course, Colonel Malone can say it far better than me, so let's let him say it and then we can discuss it.
If you have one piece of leadership advice for our audience, what would it be?
I always tell junior people that I have with me, or not, if they ask or if I get a chance to mentor them a little bit, I say the most important job is the one you have right now. You do it to the best of your ability. Whatever comes next will take care of itself, right? Because people will see that. People will see what you're doing, seeing that you're doing a good job. The reward for good work is more good work, right? So and that may lead to the next position and the next job and that next promotion. So I always start there. And there's other pieces of advice that follow on and come after that. But that's usually where I start.
What great advice for those of us in the military, because it's as we progress through our military careers, there's always that opportunity to talk about what's next and to think about what's next. But preparing for the next job by doing the current job you have well is something that is hard to remember, but that's great advice from Colonel Malone.
Absolutely, and it ties in really with our core values in the United States Air Force, which are integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. Excellence in all we do, including what you're doing right now. Even if it's not the job you want for yourself for the future, the one you have still requires excellence. So what's the next interview that jumped out to you?
Well, it's hard not to be really excited about the interview with Randy Boyd, the president of the University of Tennessee. I'm a huge Tennessee fan. And that episode also included a great interview with State Representative Jerome Moon, who was one of the lead sponsors of the Strong Act, which a tremendous number of guardsmen have taken advantage of to further their education. And both of those leaders offered really great advice. So let's play a couple of clips from the episode. If you had the chance to personally pitch a National Guard member, either an airman or a soldier, on why they should come to the University of Tennessee, what would be the pitch?
I want to start with you need to come to the state of Tennessee, because the state of Tennessee, one, you want to go to a college where you can get a job afterwards, and this is a great state to get a great job. We've got a booming economy. At the same time, we have no state income tax, and we've got some of the best education resources across the state. So it's just a great place to live and raise a family and get a great job. So kind of begin with the end in mind. Come to the state of Tennessee because this is where you're going to get a fantastic job. And then within the institution itself, back in 2013, the first time I was working with Governor Haslam, our Commissioner for Veterans Affairs, Colonel Minnie Bears Grinder, and I created a task force to make Tennessee the most veteran-friendly state in America when it comes to getting your education. And many of our universities created veteran centers and a whole series of support programs to make sure that we were the best state in America to come and get an education. Within the University of Tennessee, we're building on that and trying to make sure that with the specific programs that we talked about, with all the wraparound support that we have, and then with the financial aid that we have, and with the choice that we have of all the different campuses and programs, that this would be the absolute best place. So first, you want to live in Tennessee, you want to build your family in Tennessee, you want to get an education in Tennessee, and if you're going to get an education in Tennessee, you want to come to the University of Tennessee.
President Boyd, what is your best leadership advice for our listeners?
Dare mighty things. Be bold, think big. There's a lot of other things we could add. That's a really hard question, but I'll start with that.
One of the reasons we wanted to have you on the podcast, and we're so excited that you're joining us, is that you were one of the lead sponsors of the Strong Act. And many of our listeners will remember we've had the opportunity to talk about the Strong Act quite a bit for the past few podcasts. And we even had one podcast specifically focused on education benefits that are available to members. Could you tell us a little bit about how the Strong Act got started and why you think that this is such an important step for Tennessee?
Well, I was honored. It was a way to give back to those who have served and who are serving. And it was a great opportunity to become involved in that process of passing that piece of legislation. Thucydides said, I think 2,500 years ago, if you separate scholars from warriors, you'll have thinkers who are cowards and warriors who are fools. So it's as appropriate today. Who would ever thought one of the most technologically advanced surveillance packages would go across their country on something like a balloon? But when it was brought to me and I looked at it, we actually ran this piece of legislation twice. The first time it kind of got held up in the Senate, and we took that off time. Nick Atwood and Scarlett Bernier and James Dunn, we looked at it and we said, how can we make the Strong Act stronger? And we actually did. We brought lab fees in, and we brought some things where ROTC candidates in their college systems were being penalized by being ROTC candidates because they have certain required courses they have to take, and they would come up short their senior year in funding. So we took care of those. So when and we were going to make absolutely sure this second go around that we had enough sponsors and we had both sides. I spent as much floor time working in the Senate as I did in the House. So,
my big takeaway from both of these interviews is that Tennessee is a place that not only respects and honors the military, but is excited to support Guardsmen in their leadership journey and their careers. And so incredible stuff from both President Boyd and Representative Moon.
Absolutely great stuff on both counts.
All right. I'll kick it back to you. I know we were only going to pick 2 episodes each, but I know you have a third that you want to talk about.
I do have a third. It's near and dear to my heart because I was there. In 2023, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of our state partnership program with Bulgaria. And a lot of people don't even know what that is, a state partnership program. And that's where the state of Tennessee National Guard partners with the country of Bulgaria. We share knowledge, we share training, and I think a lot of people can learn how important that is, why it's important.
The state partnership program has been one of the most undertold stories in the National Guard and in the military in general. We have states around our nation that are partnering with democracies around the world, helping to train their militaries, and then we're in return gaining a lot of knowledge from those nations as well. It's an incredible instrument to be able to further the values of the United States and to be able to partner with other nations around the world that share our values.
Absolutely. Let's take a listen to the interviews and we can discuss that.
So what are you doing here during your visit to Bulgaria?
So the state partnership is allowing us to train multiple firemen in our aircraft. And so we have the partnership where we train them on our platform and they train us on theirs.
Yeah. So you get to see some of their aircraft?
Absolutely.
And you're training them to fire and rescue for future aircraft that they're getting.
Absolutely.
And those are U.S.-based type aircraft. Okay, cool. What have you gotten out of your time here?
It's always nice to travel, and you get to meet the interesting people, the culture, and experience just the overall vibe of the country and how pleasant these people really are.
Oh, that's awesome. And a lot of those are military members, right? Bulgarian
Absolutely.
military and Bulgarian Air Force.
Yes.
Awesome.
Our counterparts.
Yes. And why is that important?
It's important that we build these partnerships because we're all part of NATO, and we want to make sure that we keep the NATO alliance strong and that we're sharing our information to our partners to have a stronger alliance.
What's interesting is that there's actually a real-world event happening right now that we just briefed their command team on, and that they are aware of, that they've got 100 service members right now helping with cleanup efforts on a flood event in the District of Montana.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
yeah.
Awesome. All right. Why is it important that we do this?
It's very simple. If you want to build relations, how we always stress communication back home, correct? You have to work with people. You can't just stay within your comfort zone, right? So you have to get out there and meet people, learn from other people. It doesn't matter what country they're from, where they're at. With the open line of communication and learning and talking and opening up those lines with each other is very, very important.
Yeah.
That's how you build partnerships. That's how you build relationships, not just for the immediate, but also for the future.
Yes.
I think the greatest thing that I've seen since we've been here is we had the ability to watch, I guess, the Bulgarians' first medical class graduate. These soldiers have been in school for the past year, and to be able to be a part of that and see what I consider to be history in the making of seeing their first combat medics, they call themselves paramedics, graduate. And that was, to me, the most amazing thing. How many people can say they saw the first medical class graduate?
And why is that and all the things we're doing here this month important?
It's important because I think we all do the same job. To be able to understand how they work, understand how we work, and see our differences and see our how we are alike too. And it's been a great experience.
That's awesome. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
No, thank you.
Each one of our nations is able to perform certain capabilities with the main goal is saving lives. However, sometimes we have to make sure that we know each other's capabilities, we know how we operate on the field, and the importance of this comes to play when there are mixed teams. So NATO, as a multinational organization, shares the resources between each one of the nations, between one of the units.
So in this day and age, when you have multiple fronts, such as issues related to third parties that may be more hostile towards the United States, we're never going to be able to fight the next large-scale war alone. So state partnership programs are ideal in the sense of building that capability to actually bring in our partners. And if you've never been in an environment where you have to engage an enemy with a foreign troops, it is wrong time to learn in the middle of a contested battle because you're not going to do well. It's already tough enough in a fog of war to actually try to accommodate and make things happen, let alone try then to communicate effectively.
So the thing that jumped out to me in almost all the interviews, almost to a person, everyone mentioned the importance of building relationships and how that can benefit both countries moving forward. When you're in a situation that requires immediate action, such as a combat situation, you can't spend all of your time trying to learn how the other one speaks, what the other one's capabilities are. These are things you need to already know going into the situation. And that's what I think we're learning and developing better with this state partnership program.
President George H.W. Bush, when he was vice president, one of the biggest takeaways that he had walking into the presidency in 1989 was he said, "I never want my first call to another world leader to be in the middle of a crisis. I want to have a relationship with them prior to that taking place." And I think the state partnership program is a great example of the values of relationships like you're talking about, to be able to say, before we're ever working in an environment that requires speed and efficiency and urgency in a crisis or in a combat situation, we actually have these relationships already. We've already worked together. We've already trained together to be able to accomplish a mission.
Very well said. Absolutely.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this look back at 2023 as much as we did, and listening to the full episodes if you have a moment. If you haven't had the chance to listen to some of the content that was produced and the interviews that were done in 2023, it is well worth your time, and it's available on any podcast platform that you're listening to.
And we'd also like to say a big thank you to everyone who's been listening, all those that have agreed to be interviewed, and we appreciate your time and attention. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the 1796 podcast. If you like what you heard, please consider subscribing, sharing this episode with friends, and giving us a 5-star review. The 1796 podcast is produced by the Airmen and Soldiers of the Tennessee National Guard Joint Public Affairs Office. For more information, please visit www.tn.gov/military.